today territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Scugog, Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe,
Maria, we
Yep.
can't hear you.
Oh,
Now
um,
we can hear you.
okay. That's weird. I am unmuted. Okay.
Keep up, try again. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. So we'll go over a quick land acknowledgement before I get into it. So I would like to acknowledge that we are presenting today from the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Scugog, Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, which is also now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Okay. So a little bit about us. I'm Maria, the Environmental Education Engagement Coordinator at GreenLearning. So I'll be kind of presenting for you guys today, and we have Katie with us as well. She is our Environmental Education Engagement Manager, and she'll be helping us out with some of the more interactive parts of the presentation today. Okay. All right, so a couple of things that we're going to be focusing on, trying to understand what climate and pollution are. I'm sure some of you have heard these terms before, but just kind of getting a little bit more familiar with them, thinking more about your impacts of electricity on the environment, and learning more about how you can be energy efficient, how you can learn to save energy or conserve energy, and how you can take some climate action as well. Okay. All right. So to get started, we'll go over a little brainstorming session. So just with in your class, with the people next to you, think about what comes to mind when you think of or hear the words climate change. Okay. And you can just enter your responses into the chat and we'll have a little discussion. And I will put up about 3 minutes on the timer here as well. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to have that discussion. All right. So what do you think of when you hear the words climate change? Pollution, polar bears, yep. Penguins. Hmm. All those animals up north that would be really impacted. Snow. Yep. Wildfires, weather change, destroying nature, very extreme events, right? Hmm. Weather changes, getting warmer than it was 100 years ago. North and South poles. Mhm. When we think of climate change, weather events, global warming, ice melting, deforestation. Yeah, all very, very good points. Endangered animals. Hmm. Animal habitats being destroyed. Wow, you guys are killing it. Flooding, yep, lots of these extreme events, lots of animals and their habitats being impacted. Hmm. Habitat loss, endangered animals, ice melting, air pollution. Yep, the 2 degrees of change in weather. Animal population reducing, yeah, lots of them going extinct or endangered. Droughts. Arctic melting, all that sea ice melting, yep. About 30 seconds left to get some final thoughts in. Mhm. Smog and smoke, forest fires, hotter summers. Hmm. Yep. Less snow in winter, less colder as well, maybe. Yeah, that was awesome. That was an amazing brainstorming session, everyone. Very, very good. And these are all things that we're going to be chatting about throughout this webinar as well. But yeah, very good points. I'm glad you're already thinking about these things. Okay, so a little bit about what climate change is. So climate change is those changes in climate and our weather that we see over very, very long periods of time, right? So climate scientists have looked at weather data over years and years, and they've seen these trends, and they've been able to kind of identify that our climate is changing, right? And it's causing a lot of these kind of extreme events that you mentioned as well during your brainstorming session. So things like more hotter summers, so very hot days, bigger and stronger storms, lots of flooding events, melting ice in the Arctic. So all things that you've mentioned. And then some of the biggest causes of climate change are human activities. So a lot of the things, and then some of these things are things like burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas as well, right? Okay. And then what exactly is pollution? So pollution is things like trash or chemicals or smoke, like you mentioned. These are all things that are making our environment very toxic. They might be making it very unsafe for us and for animals as well. And so a couple of these kind of common greenhouse gases. So a lot of the gases that are very pollutant, they're very toxic, that kind of contribute towards climate change are carbon dioxide. So this comes from things like burning coal, oil, and natural gas for us to create electricity. So kind of those very dirty sources of energy. There's methane as well. So that comes from landfills and agriculture. So a lot of the times in farms and things like that, when animals are digesting their food, they'll create a lot of methane as well. And then lots of that comes from landfills. And then you have nitrous oxides too, right? So nitrous oxides come from a lot of the fertilizers that we use in our farms and our gardens from agriculture. And these are all things that will lead to something called the greenhouse effect, right? So I have a video over here that I want to show you. That'll just tell you a little bit more about the greenhouse effect, how it works, and why it's harming our planet. Okay.
What is the greenhouse effect? Earth is a comfortable place for living things. It's just the right temperature for plants and animals, including humans, to thrive. Why is Earth so special? Well, one reason is the greenhouse effect. A greenhouse is a building with glass walls and a glass roof. The clear glass allows sunlight to shine into the sun's heat inside. This is how a greenhouse keeps plants warm even at night and in the winter. The greenhouse effect keeps Earth warm in pretty much the same way. Earth isn't surrounded by glass, but it is surrounded by a jacket of gases called the atmosphere. In the daytime, the sun shines through the atmosphere, warming Earth's surface. After the sun goes down, Earth's surface cools. This releases heat back into the air, but some of that heat is trapped by the gases in the atmosphere. These heat-trapping gases are called greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane are all examples of greenhouse gases. Earth needs a balance of greenhouse gases to maintain just the right temperature for living things. But some human activities are changing Earth's natural greenhouse effect. For example, burning fossil fuels like coal and oil releases more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. These extra greenhouse gases can cause the atmosphere to trap more and more heat, leading to a warmer Earth. NASA satellites are constantly measuring the gases in our atmosphere from space. They've observed increases in the amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The information from NASA satellites can help scientists figure out where greenhouse gases are coming from and how they are ending up in our atmosphere. And help us better understand this very special greenhouse that we call home. Find out more about our Earth at NASA Climate Kids.
Okay, so that's a little bit more about what those greenhouse gases are and how they're kind of impacting our planet, right? Okay, so we are going to play a game of true versus false. So a statement will come up onto your screen, and I want you to decide if you think it's true or false. If you think it's true, just put your thumbs up. If you think it's false, put your thumbs down. If you're not too sure, maybe just to the side. And then teachers, you can just enter the majority answer that comes up onto your poll on the screen. All right. So our first question here is climate and weather mean the same thing. So is this true or do we think it's false? I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay. All right. So it looks like some of you said true, some of you said false. So this one's actually false. So climate and weather are pretty different. They do kind of rely on each other, but they are a little bit different, and I'll just tell you why. So weather is kind of what we see outside happening every single day. It's always different. So where I am today, it's a little sunny and kind of cloudy as well. It's a little chilly today. It might be a little bit different where you are. And so this just kind of changes on a day-to-day basis. This is kind of looking at the clothes that you're going to wear every day. All right. On the other hand, we have climate. So climate is looking at those longer periods of weather over longer periods of time. They're looking at these trends over years and years and kind of gathering that data from there, right? So that's how we know that climate change is happening, how global warming is happening. And these are kind of like the clothes that you would have in your closet. So in Canada here, we have 4 different seasons. So you might have clothes for each of those different seasons. So that's kind of the longer periods of time that we see those changes in weather. Okay. One of the main greenhouse gases are nitrogen. Is this true or false? Another second or two. Okay. All right. Like you guys got that one. So this one is false. We talked about earlier, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxides are actually the three main greenhouse gases. Nitrogen is actually a very important part of the Earth's atmosphere. It helps a lot of plants and animals grow. So it is something that we do need. It's just kind of when it mixes with those other chemicals, becomes those nitrous oxides, they're a lot more harmful, right? And we talked about that coming from those fertilizers and things like that. And then finally, human activities are the biggest cause of climate change. So is this true or false? Okay. All right. And oh, okay. So it looks like you all got that one correct. That one is true. We talked about how humans burn tons of fossil fuels to drive cars, power their homes, and things like that. And these are just a couple of those activities that will lead to climate change. So things like deforestation, waste and landfills, pollution from driving, burning fossil fuels, all things that are speeding that process up. Okay, so one of the ways that we contribute to climate change and create a lot of these harmful emissions is through producing electricity, right? This does depend on the way that we are creating that electricity. So if we're relying on fossil fuels, we talked about how those are a lot more dirtier and non-renewable. So things like burning coal and oil and natural gas creates a lot of those emissions, a lot of those toxic pollutants that go out into the environment and harm our planet. If you are relying on some of these cleaner sources of energy like solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear as well, you're burning fewer of those emissions and it's just a lot more cleaner and reliable for you to kind of get your electricity from. Um, so how exactly does electricity get to our homes and our schools? How are we able to plug in our laptops and our chargers, our microwaves, and things like that and actually use that electricity that's being created? So the first step is generation. So that means creating or making electricity. This can happen in a bunch of different ways, like we talked about. So it can be through those dirtier sources like fossil fuel burning or cleaner things like wind and solar. So our electricity will be generated at this first stage. After that, it needs to be distributed or sent out to everyone to actually use. So that'll happen through these power lines here. So I'm sure you've seen these as you go outside, lots of these kind of power lines, and each of these wires is actually carrying that electricity that's being created all the way to where you are in your schools and your homes. A lot of the times in those busier urban areas where there's lots of kind of buildings and things like that, there isn't really room for these big towers, so they'll be underground a lot of the times. You can't really see them, and those are what's kind of supplying that electricity to people. And then finally it gets to your outlets and stuff so that you can kind of consume them and use them to charge your phones and do all that good stuff. Okay. So another important thing to kind of remember is in Canada, in each province, our electricity is generated in a very different way. So here in Ontario, we create electricity very differently than we would in Alberta or BC or Nova Scotia. So if we look at these tables over here, so this is comparing electricity generation in Ontario versus Alberta. So you'll see here in Ontario, a lot of our electricity comes from nuclear plants. So I'm sure you've seen kind of those big power plants and stuff around. A lot of our electricity is coming from there. We do rely quite a bit on hydroelectricity as well. So that's water energy that we're using. So those turbines are spinning with the speed of the water and creating that electricity. And then a little bit of wind, solar, and fossil fuels as well. And then if you go over to Alberta, you see that 92% of their electricity, so that's a really, really big chunk here, that's being produced through those fossil fuels. So things like coal, oil, natural gas, very, very harmful for our environment. If any of you have been to Alberta or know anything about Alberta, you'll know that they do have a really big kind of oil industry. So a lot of their electricity is coming from those dirtier sources. Um, and then it might look very different in BC as well, where they rely more on renewable energy sources too. Okay. So, there are different ways for you to measure electricity. Watts is what we kind of use. It's a unit of power to measure electricity. We do have these watt meters as well, which I can show you in just a second. So this is a way for us to be able to see how much energy things like our lamps or our chargers and things like that are using. So I'm actually just going to quickly grab my watt meter here and I'll just show you how that works. All right. So we've got our watt meter. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have my lamp over here and I'm just going to plug that in and see how much electricity my lamp is using up. All right, so I just have to reach it here. And so this watt meter gets plugged into your outlet or your power bar, whatever you have. And so you'll see right now it just says kind of 0 watts on there because I don't have anything plugged in. And I will plug my lamp in. Okay, let's put this right here. And so as I turn my lamp on, you can kind of see those numbers start to go up. All right, so it's at about 5.5, 5.6 watts. So that's how much electricity my lamp is using right now. And then we do have this super cool tool on our website as well that you can use to see how much electricity your lamp is using or whatever you plug in per year, and how many of those greenhouse gas emissions they're producing as well. And then it's kind of nice to play around with this feature as well. So this is on our website for you, free to use. It's our electrical energy calculator. So you just put in the number of watts that your appliance or your electronic is using, put in the number of minutes per day. So if I'm plugging in my phone charger or my lamp, maybe I'm using that for about 60 minutes a day. I calculate my yearly energy uses and it'll give me all of these numbers. And it's cool to kind of play around with this because as we know now, in each province, our electricity is generated in a very different way. In Alberta, it's coming from those dirtier sources. In Ontario, it's a little bit more cleaner. So these numbers do change quite a bit when you compare Alberta to Ontario or any of these other provinces. So definitely feel free to check that out. It's fun to kind of play around with. You also don't really need a watt meter either to get the number of watts that your electronic is using. This is something that you can just get from a Google search or something like that. And a lot of appliances will sometimes have the number of kilowatts or watts per hour on them as well. So it's just a matter of kind of looking into that and then playing around with that. Okay, so we're gonna switch over a little bit and talk trees. So let's have another little brainstorming session. Maybe I'll give you a minute or two this time, and just share some ideas and tell me why you think trees are so important to our environment. So I'll put maybe 2 minutes on the timer here, and you guys can go for it and share some of your ideas in the chat. They give us oxygen. Yep, that's a big one. Yep, they're turning carbon dioxide into oxygen. They absorb carbon dioxide. Yep, provide a home for animals. hmm Yep, great habitat, filters our air. hmm Provide shade and habitats for living things. Provide food. Yep, a great food source. Looks like we've got the big ones here. Create paper and wood to build. Yep, especially here in Canada, right? We have a big lumber industry. Oh, we've got lots over here. Oxygen helps us build things, paper, money, shelter for animals, shade, food, and fruits. Wood for fire, sap for maple syrup. Yeah, that's always good. Pencils, homes to many animals. Yeah, to have forests. They provide food for humans and animals. We use them for paper, food, building, shelter, oxygen. Awesome. That's amazing. Yep. So these are all super, super important things. Trees are very, very important for our, not just our environment, but for us as well. Okay, so you might have heard of the term carbon sink before. So forests and trees are really, really good carbon sinks. They're very good at absorbing a lot of carbon dioxide. So not only are they giving us oxygen, but those greenhouse gases that we talked about, carbon dioxide being one of them, the trees are very good at absorbing those as well. So this is super interesting, but a tree that's kind of reached its maturity will be able to absorb up to 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide every year. So that's kind of like two of these big onion bags. When you go to the grocery stores, even just one is just so heavy to carry. But that's two of those bags that trees are able to absorb that same amount of carbon dioxide. Okay. So this is a cool example here. We're using the electrical energy calculator that I talked about earlier, and we're looking at Ontario here. And so this is an example of one light bulb. So if I were to light one light bulb, just like I did with my lamp just now, it'll create about 3 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is based on that energy calculator that I just showed you. And so because one tree can absorb up to 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide, just one light bulb is one tree is more than enough to kind of absorb all of that carbon dioxide that comes from that light bulb. All right. And then if you look at 18 kilograms of carbon, sorry, if you look at 6 light bulbs over here, all 6 of these are producing about 18 kilograms of carbon dioxide. And even then, just this one tree is able to absorb all of that CO2. And so that's for here in Ontario. And then if we fly over to BC, you'll see that one light bulb is creating about 74 kilograms of carbon dioxide compared to the 3 that's here in Ontario. And so this is because of those dirtier fossil fuels that are creating a lot of that electricity. And so in this case, in Alberta, we would need about 4 trees to absorb that amount of carbon dioxide, right? So you can see just how much of an impact these energy productions have and how important these trees are to our environment as well, right? And so these are a couple of things to think about when you're thinking about how you can take action. So we've talked about quite a big topic here today, greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. These are all things that are kind of human-led and things that are sometimes difficult to kind of control. So this is here kind of a circle of influence. And so a way to kind of think about this is divide your actions up into smaller steps so that you don't kind of overwhelm yourselves. So in the middle over here, you have things that you can control. So things like telling your friends and your families and teachers and things like that about the things you've learned today, maybe planting some trees, maybe doing a lights out event at your school as well to try to track your energy usage and reduce the amount of electricity that you are using. So these are some of the things that you can do yourselves just at your level. And then out here are the things that you can influence. So these are things like maybe telling your teachers about what you've learned and being able to kind of try to make a change, but not carrying out any kind of action. And then you have things that you can't really control out here. So these are um, things like maybe the emissions that are kind of being released from like planes and things like that. So these are much bigger things. And so we do have this cool resource on our website as well. This is our e-cards program. So this is a way for you to kind of spread your message to a lot more people. You can write down or draw a picture of things that are important to you when it comes to energy conservation or reducing the amount of energy that you use. And you can share this on our eCards website. Katie has shared a link below as well into the chat. So you can use that to submit your ideas. And this will go onto our website, and we'll also work towards sharing this with leaders in our country or in our provinces to try to get them to make an impact as well. So that those things that you cannot control, maybe those leaders are able to control. And so through our eCards program, you're able to reach a lot more people and share your message to more people as well. All right. And then we also kind of encourage you to take action on these ideas that you have as well. So carrying out something like a lights out event at your school, something that you might have done on Friday as well for Earth Hour. So doing something like this, you're able to track how much electricity you're using in school already, and then how much you're able to save if you do a lights out event. So definitely check out this challenge. You can do this at your school, just in your class. And the bonus here is that you can win up to $1,000 for your class as well, which is always exciting. So a link for that has been shared as well, and you can register for that, sign up for it, and share your ideas with us too. So we'd love to hear more from you and hear more about what you kind of do with this energy event. And then, yeah, I'm glad you could all join us today. Does anybody have any questions or anything? And before we get into the questions, I do just want to share this QR code as well. So teachers, you can just scan this. It's just a student survey that you can do as a class together, and it really helps us with our webinars, making them stronger. If there's anything that you wish that we talked about a little bit more, feel free to add that in as well, and we can kind of, we're always kind of just working to improve our webinars. But yeah, and then if you do have any other questions later on, feel free to reach out to us at this email address. And I'll hang back for a little bit if anyone has any questions or comments or anything else that they wanted to share.